Commander Jiho's coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he hadn't noticed. The Seoul Defense Center hummed with its usual midnight activity when the impossible happened. Every screen in the facility suddenly flickered, displaying the same ethereal, blue hologram that now floated above his desk like a ghost made of light. The figure in the projection was tall, unnaturally thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer like oil on water. Its voice carried an odd musical quality that made Jiho's teeth ache. "People of Earth," the alien began, its words perfectly synchronized with Korean subtitles that appeared beneath it. "I am Ambassador Vex of the Galactic Council. Your species has been observed and classified as a developing civilization. You will cease all military activities within 30 rotations of your primary star and submit to Council guidance protocols or face immediate pacification measures." Jiho leaned forward, studying the creature's face. Its eyes were too large, too dark, like looking into deep space itself. Behind Vex, he could make out what appeared to be a massive chamber filled with other alien forms, some floating, others with too many limbs, all watching Earth's transmission with the casual interest of farmers discussing livestock. The hologram continued. "Your weapons are primitive. Your technology is crude. Your resistance would be futile and unnecessarily destructive. Choose wisdom, choose survival. You have 30 rotations to comply." Before Jiho could reach for his communicator, Admiral Hyojin burst through the reinforced doors, her usually perfect uniform disheveled, her face flushed from running. "Sir, we're receiving similar messages worldwide," she gasped, trying to catch her breath. "The Americans got it at NORAD, the Russians at their Kremlin bunker, Chinese at their Beijing command center. Every major installation, every government, building, every military base on the planet, they're all getting the exact same message, translated perfectly into local languages." Jiho stood slowly, his mind racing. How is that even possible? They'd need to understand every human language, every dialect, every cultural nuance. "That's not the worst part," Hyojin continued, pulling up her tablet. "Our satellites are detecting massive energy signatures just outside our solar system. Hundreds of them. Ships, sir, big ones. They're just sitting there waiting." Through the reinforced windows of the command center, Jiho could see Seoul's skyline, millions of people going about their evening routines, completely unaware that humanity had just received its first and possibly last alien ultimatum. Street vendors were closing their stalls. Couples walked hand in hand through the illuminated parks. Children played in apartment courtyards. Normal life about to change. "Forever, sir," Hyojin pressed. "President Yoon Seo is already being briefed. The UN Security Council is convening an emergency session. But, sir, what do we do? They're clearly more advanced than us. Those ships out there, they're massive. Our best estimates suggest each one is larger than our biggest aircraft carriers." Jiho walked to the tactical display wall, where Earth's defensive positions glowed like tiny pinpricks of light scattered across the globe. Missile installations, naval fleets, air force bases, space platforms, everything humanity had built to protect itself looked suddenly inadequate, like children's toys arranged against a thunderstorm. "You know what bothers me most about their message?" Jiho said quietly, still staring at the display. "They didn't ask, they didn't negotiate, they didn't even threaten properly. They just assumed we'd roll over and surrender." Hyojin frowned. "Sir, with respect, maybe we should consider their offer. If they can translate every human language perfectly and position a fleet outside our system without us detecting them until now, their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "That's exactly my point." Jiho turned, his eyes holding a dangerous glint that Hyojin had seen only once before, during the crisis 3 years ago, when North Korea had launched those unauthorized drones. "They think they know us. They've been watching, observing, classifying us like we're some kind of lab experiment. But here's what they don't understand about humans, Hyojin." He walked back to his desk, where the alien hologram still flickered. Vex's dark eyes seeming to stare directly at him with that same casual superiority. "We don't like bullies, and we really don't like being told what to do by strangers who've never bothered to introduce themselves properly." Jiho reached for his secure communicator, the red one that connected directly to President Yoon Seo's emergency line. But before dialing, he paused, looking back at Hyojin with something that might have been a smile. Contact President Yoon Seo immediately. Tell her we need to convene the Global Defense Initiative within the hour. And Hae-jin?" He paused, his finger hovering over another button, one marked with symbols that few people in the world even knew existed. "Activate Protocol 7. It's time to see what humanity is really capable of when someone tries to push us around." The button was small, innocuous-looking, but when Ji-ho pressed it, signals began racing across the globe to facilities that officially didn't exist, awakening projects that had been sleeping for decades, waiting for the day when Earth would need to defend itself against the impossible. Observer Nex drifted through the zero-gravity monitoring chamber, his 8 tentacles dancing across holographic displays that showed Earth in real time. The creature's bulbous head pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, a sign of deep concentration among his species. Around him, dozens of other observers floated in their biopods, each monitoring different aspects of the primitive world below. The Ball Council's prediction models had been clear. Humans would surrender within 6 rotations. Every species they'd encountered followed the same pattern. First came panic, then desperate attempts at negotiation, finally complete submission. It was as predictable as stellar decay. But something was wrong. Nex's tentacles flicked rapidly. Across the data streams, his compound eyes widening as he processed the information flowing from Earth's surface. The electromagnetic chatter that had filled human communication networks for the past day had suddenly vanished, replaced by an eerie silence that made his skin crawl. "Commander Gal-Lux," Nex called out, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones of distress that his species used in emergencies. The massive crystalline being at the center of the chamber turned, its faceted body refracting the monitoring station's lights into rainbow patterns. "Report, observer." Gal-Lux's voice resonated through the chamber like breaking glass. "The humans are not responding as predicted," Nex continued, pulling up a 3-dimensional map of Earth that rotated slowly between them. "Their military communications have gone completely dark, but look at these energy signatures." The planet's surface lit up with thousands of bright spots, each one representing power sources that hadn't existed just hours before. Underground facilities were coming online across every continent, drawing massive amounts of energy from sources the Council's sensors couldn't identify. "Impossible." Gal-Lux moved closer, his crystalline form clicking against the chamber's walls. "Our behavioral models show 99.7% accuracy across 1,500 conquered species. Humans should be broadcasting surrender signals by now." Meanwhile, 15,000 kilometers below, General Taeyang stood in a bunker that officially didn't exist, buried 300 meters beneath the mountains outside Seoul. The facility hummed with activity as dozens of officers worked at stations displaying information that would have been classified beyond imagination just days ago. "Quantum Channel 7 is secure," reported his communications officer Min-Soo. "We have direct connection with Pentagon, Kremlin, Beijing, and 47 other command centers worldwide." On the massive central screen, faces appeared from around the globe. American generals, Russian colonels, Chinese admirals, Indian scientists, European researchers. Traditional enemies sat side by side in virtual conference rooms, sharing secrets that would have started wars just a week ago. "Ladies and gentlemen," Taeyang began, "Protocol 7 is now active. As of this moment, every nation on Earth is sharing all military technology, research data, and strategic resources. The classification levels that separated us no longer exist." Dr. So Young, a quantum physicist who had been pulled from her laboratory in Busan just hours ago, looked up from her workstation where she was interfacing with scientists from around the world. Her screen showed schematics that combined American stealth technology, Russian missile systems, Chinese electronics, and German engineering. "General, we're making incredible progress," she called out, excitement clear in her voice. "The Americans have been secretly developing plasma propulsion systems. The Russians have been working on gravitational manipulation. The Chinese have quantum communication networks we never knew existed. When we combine all our technologies together, we're not as primitive as these aliens think." Across the Pacific, Captain Do-hyun monitored Earth's orbital space from a facility hidden beneath the mountains of Colorado. Working alongside American and European colleagues he'd been trained to consider potential enemies. His screens showed objects that civilian populations had always believed were simple communication satellites. Back on the alien monitoring station, Nex's tentacles writhed with increasing agitation as he watched Earth's transformation. The planet's electromagnetic signature was changing so rapidly that his instruments could barely keep up. Underground power sources were connecting to form a global network. Orbital objects were repositioning themselves into clearly defensive formations, and massive energy readings were coming from locations that had appeared empty just hours before. "Commander," Nex's voice carried harmonics of fear now. "These humans have been deceiving us. What we thought were primitive communication networks were actually coordination systems for a global defense grid. Those orbital platforms weren't satellites at all." Gal-Lux's crystalline body darkened, a sign of deep concern among his kind. "Show me their military communications." "There are none, sir. Complete radio silence across all traditional frequencies. But the quantum emissions suggest they're using communication methods we've never encountered before. They're talking to each other, but we can't intercept or decode their messages." The most disturbing part was what the sensors were detecting beneath Earth's surface. Massive construction projects that must have taken decades were suddenly activating. Factory complexes, research facilities, weapons platforms, all hidden from orbital observation by technologies the Council didn't understand. "Sir," Nex's voice was barely above a whisper now, "I don't think these humans are as primitive as we thought. I think they've been preparing for something like this for a very long time." The Council's demonstration fleet emerged from hyperspace, like a swarm of metallic wasps, their ships gleaming against the star-filled void. 200 vessels of various sizes, from nimble scouts to massive dreadnoughts, arranged themselves in perfect formation as they approached the inner solar system. Each ship bore the distinctive markings of the Galactic Council, symbols that had brought surrender from countless worlds across the galaxy. Fleet Commander Zelthas stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Victory, his four arms working the tactical displays with practiced ease. His species, the Kethva, had evolved from apex predators, and their warrior culture had made them the Council's primary enforcement arm. 17 worlds had submitted to his fleets without significant resistance. Earth would be number 18. "Sensors show primitive defensive installations throughout their system," reported his tactical officer, a spider-like creature whose many eyes glowed with data streams. "Their largest vessels appear to be crude fusion-powered craft. This should be over within one rotation." Zelthas nodded, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Open a channel to the human fleet. Let them see what real power looks like before we demonstrate it." But as the Council fleet approached Earth's orbital defense zone, something unexpected happened. The human vessels, instead of arranging themselves in defensive formations, began spreading out in seemingly random patterns. Ships that appeared to be converted civilian craft mixed with military vessels, creating a chaotic arrangement that violated every rule of space combat Zelthas had ever learned. Captain Minho gripped the command chair of the Soul's Pride, a massive cargo hauler that had been carrying grain shipments between Earth and Mars just a week ago. Now experimental plasma cannons jutted from hastily welded weapon mounts, and her cargo bays had been converted into fighter launch platforms. The ship looked like a patchwork of different technologies, human ingenuity at its finest. "All ships, this is Falcon Leader," Minho broadcast on the encrypted channel that connected every human vessel in the defense fleet. "Remember what we're fighting for. We're not just defending Earth. We're showing these aliens what happens when they threaten humanity. Today they learn that humans don't bow to anyone." The response came back from dozens of ships, voices speaking in Korean, English, Russian, Spanish, Chinese, and a dozen other languages, all united by determination. Converted freighters, military destroyers, mining vessels armed with industrial lasers, even luxury yachts fitted with missile pods. Humanity had turned everything that could fly into a weapon of war. Lieutenant Yunji checked her fighter's systems one final time. The small craft had been built from spare parts and experimental technology, its hull patched together from materials that had never been designed to work together. But it flew, it fought, and that was enough. Ghost Squadron. Form up on me, she called to her wingmates. We've got the biggest target in their fleet. Let's show them Korean hospitality. The battle began when the Council ships opened fire with their energy weapons, brilliant beams of concentrated plasma that could vaporize a human ship in seconds. But the humans didn't fight like any species the Council had encountered before. Instead of maintaining formation and trading long-range fire, they scattered in all directions, attacking from every angle at once. The Soul's Pride dove directly toward the Council flagship, her experimental plasma cannons firing continuously. The shots weren't very accurate, but Minho wasn't trying to hit anything specific. He was trying to create chaos, confusion, to break the enemy's perfect formation. Incoming fighters, his tactical officer, Sergeant Haewon, called out. Alien interceptors, moving to engage. Launch everything we have, Minho ordered. And get me a collision course with that command ship. Council vessels began exploding as human ships attacked with tactics that defied logic. A converted mining ship flew directly into a Council destroyer's weapon array, its industrial drills tearing through alien armor. A luxury yacht, its passenger compartments packed with explosives, detonated against a battlecruiser's shields in a brilliant flash. What are they doing? Zelthas demanded as his tactical display showed impossible readings. These ships are attacking without regard for their own survival. They're ramming us. Lieutenant Yunji's fighter had taken multiple hits. Her weapons systems were dead, her life support was failing, but her engines still worked. Through her cracked canopy, she could see the massive Council destroyer that had killed 3 of her squadron mates, its dark hull bristling with weapons. There's Ghost Leader, she transmitted, her voice calm despite the alarms screaming in her cockpit. I'm going for their engine core. Tell my mother I fought well. Her fighter, no bigger than a bus, slammed into the destroyer's main reactor at full velocity. The explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers, taking out 2 smaller Council ships that had been flying in formation. Impossible, Zelthas muttered, watching his tactical display as 3 more of his ships vanished in brilliant explosions. They're ramming us. What species rams enemy vessels? This violates every principle of self-preservation. But the humans kept coming. When their weapons failed, they used their ships as weapons. When their ships were crippled, pilots ejected in escape pods and tried to board enemy vessels. When their fighters ran out of ammunition, they flew into alien weapon arrays, disrupting targeting systems through sheer determination. The battle raged for hours, space filled with debris from both fleets. Human ships, outgunned and outclassed, fell in dozens, but each loss seemed to make the survivors fight harder. Council vessels, technologically superior but psychologically unprepared for such tactics, began falling back in confusion. Captain Du-young of the destroyer, Busan's hammer, watched his ship's hull breach, warnings multiply as alien plasma tore through his vessel. Half his crew was dead, his engines were failing, but his nuclear missiles were still operational. All ships, this is Hammer Leader, he broadcast. My reactor is critical, but I've got a clear shot at their flagship. Cover me. The Busan's hammer limped toward the inevitable victory, trailing atmosphere and debris, but her missile tubes were still functional. At point-blank range, she fired everything she had, then detonated her own reactor for good measure, by the sakes. Battle's end, the void around Earth was filled with wreckage from both fleets. The Council had lost 47 ships, including 2 dreadnoughts and a command vessel. The humans had lost over half their fleet, but those still fighting showed no sign of retreat. They regrouped, reloaded, and prepared for the next attack. 4. The first time in his career, Fleet Commander Zelthas ordered a withdrawal. The Grand Council chambers had stood unchanged for 3,000 years, their crystalline walls designed to project calm and authority. Today, those same walls hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered in emergency session. Floating biopods, walking crystal formations, gaseous entities in containment suits, and creatures that defied. Description filled the vast space with anxious chatter. High Chancellor Vothkam, a being whose species had ruled the galaxy for millennia, watched the chaos with growing alarm. His elongated skull pulsed with the stress patterns that his kind displayed when facing the impossible. Never in recorded galactic history had the EE Council faced such a crisis. Order, order! Vortkam's voice resonated through the chamber's acoustic systems. Science Director Malkor will present the latest intelligence from the human conflict zone. Malkor, a creature resembling a massive jellyfish with dozens of analytical appendages, floated to the center of the chamber. His transparent body flickered, with bioluminescent patterns of deep concern, as holographic displays materialized around him. General, the orbital platforms are moving into position, Do-hyun reported through the quantum channel. 17 years of international cooperation disguised as civilian space programs. The aliens think they're looking at communication satellites, but we've got directed energy weapons, kinetic bombardment systems, and defensive screens they've never seen before. Honored Council members, Malkor began, his voice carrying harmonic undertones of distress. The situation has escalated beyond our worst projections. The humans are not simply resisting our authority, they are actively hunting our forces throughout their star system and beyond. The holographic display showed a supply convoy of Council ships, their hulls torn open and drifting in space near Jupiter's moons. The destruction was total, but what disturbed the aliens most was the surgical precision of the attack. This convoy was carrying quantum processors to our forward base on Europa, Malkor continued. The humans struck with modified vessels that our sensors barely detected. But here is what troubles us most. The display zoomed in on debris from human ships scattered among the wreckage. Instead of standard human technology, the fragments showed clear modifications using Council materials and energy signatures. They've modified our plasma cores to overload, Malkor reported, his appendages trembling with agitation. When surrounded and facing capture, they detonate their own ships to take ours with them. The practice is spreading throughout their fleet. It's unprecedented in galactic warfare. A collective shudder ran through the chamber. Sacrifice tactics were known among primitive species, but usually only in desperate last stands. The humans were using them as standard operating procedure, turning every engagement into a potential disaster for Council forces. Meanwhile, in the captured research station orbiting Saturn, Major J1 moved through corridors that had been completely transformed in just 6 weeks. What had once been a sterile alien laboratory now buzzed with human activity. Korean, American, and Russian technicians worked side by side, their equipment a bizarre fusion of Earth technology and captured alien systems. Status report, Dr. Cho-hee, J1 called to the lead scientist, a brilliant woman who had been studying theoretical physics at Seoul National University when the aliens arrived. Major, we've cracked their quantum communication system, Dr. Ia. Cho-hee replied, her eyes bright with excitement as she gestured to banks of hybrid equipment. We're not just intercepting their messages anymore, we're sending our own. The entire Council network is compromised. Through the station's viewports, J1 could see human ships arriving and departing regularly, using the facility as a forward base deep in alien-controlled space. What had started as a desperate raid had become something far more significant. Humanity's first foothold in the greater galaxy. Sir, called Sergeant Kyung-min from the communications center, we're picking up chatter from other species throughout the galaxy. Word about our resistance is spreading. Back in the Council chambers, the situation reports continued to worsen. Observer Nex, still haunted by his early misreading of human behavior, projected intelligence data that defied understanding. The humans have established 17 forward bases using captured Council technology, Nex reported, his tentacles writhing with agitation. They're not just defending their home system anymore. They're expanding outward, raiding our supply lines, and disrupting operations across 12 star systems. How is this possible? Demanded General Klexvor, a massive armored creature whose species served as the Council's primary military force. They barely achieved interplanetary flight when we first observed them. They learn, General, Nex replied quietly. They adapt faster than any species we've encountered. Every piece of our technology they capture is reverse-engineered within weeks. Every tactic we use against them is countered and improved upon. The chamber's main communication array suddenly activated without authorization, displaying the image of a human female in military uniform. The alien security systems, supposedly impenetrable, had been completely bypassed. "Council members," President Yoon Seo announced, her image crystal clear despite being transmitted across dozens of light years, "I thought it was time we had a proper conversation." The chamber erupted in alarm as security officers scrambled to cut the transmission, but their efforts were useless. The human signal was being routed through their own quantum networks, using their own technology against them. "Oh, you wanted to pacify us," President Yoon Seo continued calmly, seemingly unaware of the chaos her appearance had caused. "Instead, you've united us in ways we never thought possible. Every human now knows we're not alone in the universe, and frankly, we're not impressed with the neighbors." Behind her, the aliens could see what appeared to be a war room filled with humans and captured alien technology working in perfect harmony. Strategic displays showed human ships operating throughout the galaxy, striking targets with increasing coordination and effectiveness. "We've spent 6 months studying your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses," Yoon Seo said. "We've learned that you've grown comfortable ruling through fear and superior technology, but you've never faced a species that refuses to be ruled." The transmission showed additional feeds from human bases throughout the solar system and beyond. Manufacturing facilities were producing hybrid human-alien vessels. Research centers were developing new weapons, and training academies were preparing a new generation of human warriors who had grown up knowing aliens existed. "Other species are watching this conflict with great interest," Yoon Seo concluded. "Some have begun asking questions about council authority they've never dared ask before. Change is coming to your galaxy, whether you're ready or not." The transmission ended, leaving the council chambers in stunned silence. For the first time in millennia, the absolute authority of the Galactic Council was being challenged not by another advanced civilization, but by a species they had dismissed as primitive. High Chancellor Vorthkam looked around the chamber at representatives of species that had submitted to council rule for thousands of years. In their eyes, he saw something that terrified him more than human weapons or tactics: doubt. The humans had done more than resist conquest. They had shown the galaxy that the council could be defied, defeated, and humiliated, and that knowledge was spreading faster than any fleet could contain it. The great council chambers had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, but never had the ancient walls trembled with such fierce debate. Representatives from 47 species filled the vast space, their voices creating a cacophony of alien languages that the translation systems struggled to process. Some delegates floated in zero-gravity pods, others stood on crystalline platforms, while gaseous beings swirled within containment fields. High Chancellor Vorthkam raised his elongated arms, demanding silence, but the chamber remained in chaos. Half the council members were calling for humanity's complete extermination, their voices rising in harmonic frequencies of rage and fear. The other half proposed something that hadn't been considered in 10,000 years of galactic history, offering full membership to a species that had actively resisted council authority. "The humans are a plague," screeched Ambassador Crixtel, a bird-like creature whose feathers had turned bright red with anger. "They've infected 12 star systems with their rebellion. Other species are questioning our authority because of them." General Vexmore, his armored carapace clicking with agitation, projected holographic images of destroyed council fleets. "They've cost us 200 vessels, 17 research stations, and countless supply convoys. No species has ever inflicted such losses on the council." But from the other side of the chamber came voices of a different tone. Elder Zeph Ira, whose species had been among the council's founding members, spoke with the wisdom of millennia. "Perhaps," she said, her crystalline form pulsing with thoughtful light patterns, "we have grown too comfortable in our dominance. These humans have shown capabilities we didn't think possible from a developing species. Maybe it's time to reconsider our approach." The debate raged for hours until the massive ceremonial doors opened, with a deep, resonating tone that silenced the chamber. Through the entrance, which had been designed to intimidate visiting species with its sheer scale, walked a small group of humans. Ambassador Sujin led the delegation, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. She wore Earth's newly designed diplomatic uniform, a creation that somehow managed to be both practical and elegant. The dark blue fabric incorporated technological elements that clearly showed human advancement, while the cut maintained the dignity required for such an occasion. Her security detail, composed of soldiers from various Earth nations, moved with the disciplined precision that had become humanity's trademark. As Sujin approached the central speaking platform, a structure that rose from the chamber floor like a mountain peak, the assembled aliens studied her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. She was smaller than most of the beings present, seemingly fragile compared to the armored species and energy creatures that surrounded her, yet her presence filled the enormous space. "Honored Council," Sujin began, her voice calm and clear as the translation systems carried her words to every species present. "Earth comes before you today, not as a supplicant seeking mercy, but as an equal seeking recognition." The chamber stirred with surprised murmurs. No species had ever addressed the Council in such terms. Throughout galactic history, newly contacted civilizations had begged for acceptance, offered tribute, or submitted unconditionally. None had ever claimed equality. "You tried to break us," Sujin continued, her gaze sweeping across the assembled representatives, "and instead forged us into something stronger than we ever thought possible. You united a species that had spent centuries fighting among themselves. You gave us a purpose that transcended our old divisions." High Chancellor Vorthkam leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying this human with growing fascination. His species had ruled the galaxy for longer than human civilization had existed, yet something about this small being commanded his attention. "Ambassador Sujin," he said, his voice carrying the weight of millennia, "your species defies all our behavioral models. We have observed 1,500 civilizations, and all followed predictable patterns when faced with superior force. Tell me, why do humans not fear overwhelming odds?" Sujin smiled, and in that expression Vorthkam saw something that chilled him to his core. It wasn't the smile of submission he expected, nor the desperate grin of a cornered animal. It was the smile of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. "Because we learned something you forgot long ago," she replied. "Sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to lose. You see overwhelming odds as a reason to surrender. We see them as a challenge to overcome." The chamber erupted again, but this time the debate had a different quality. Species that had remained silent for centuries began voicing opinions, many expressing admiration for human determination. The carefully maintained order of the Council was cracking, and everyone could feel it. Captain Minseo, Sujin's military aide, stepped forward and activated a portable holographic projector. The display showed human settlements throughout the galaxy, research stations advancing alien technology in ways their creators had never imagined, and hybrid human-alien ships patrolling space lanes that had been Council territory for millennia. "We're not asking for your permission to exist," Sujin said as the images continued. "We're informing you that we already do. Humans now operate in 47 star systems. We've established trade relationships with species you've never contacted. We've created technologies by combining our knowledge with yours in ways you never considered." The most shocking image showed representatives from other species visiting human facilities, sharing knowledge and resources without Council oversight. The carefully controlled galactic order that had existed for 10,000 years was already changing, with or without the Council's approval. Elder Zeph Ira rose from her crystalline platform, her ancient form glowing with decision. "I call for a formal vote on human membership in the Galactic Council." The chamber fell silent as the voting began. Each species cast their decision through quantum-encrypted channels, their choices appearing as lights on the great display that dominated one wall of the chamber. Green lights indicated support for human membership. Red lights showed opposition. The count was closer than anyone had predicted. Species that had been loyal Council members for millennia voted in favor of humanity, while others that had recently joined opposed the motion. The final tally showed a margin of just 3 votes in favor of human membership. As the results appeared, Sujin felt the weight of history settling around her. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic politics, membership in The Galactic Council not through submission or negotiation, but through demonstrated strength and unwavering determination. "Welcome to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Sujin," High Chancellor Vorthkam said, though his voice carried undertones of uncertainty. "Though I suspect the galaxy will never be quite the same." Sujin bowed respectfully to the assembled representatives, then straightened with the confidence that had carried humanity through its greatest challenge. "High Chancellor," she replied, "we're counting on it." As the ceremony concluded and the chamber began to empty, species representatives approached the human delegation with curiosity and respect that would have been impossible just months earlier. The galaxy had gained a new member, one that had earned their place not through submission, but through the simple refusal to be conquered. The end.